1. Loomings. Call me Ishmael. Some years ago, never mind how long precisely, having little or no money in my purse, and nothing in particular to interest me on shore, I thought I would sail about a little and see the watery part of the world. It is a way I have of driving off the spleen and regulating the circulation. Whenever I find myself growing grim about the mouth, whenever it is a damp, drizzly November in my soul, whenever I find myself involuntarily pausing before coffin warehouses, and bringing up the rear of every funeral I meet, especially whenever my hypos get such an upper hand of me, that it requires such a strong moral principle to prevent me from deliberately stepping into the street and methodically knocking people's hats off. Then I count it high time to get to sea as soon as I can. This is my substitute for pistol and ball. With a philosophical flourish, Cato throws himself upon the sword. I quietly take to the ship. There's nothing surprising about this. If they but knew it, almost all men in their degree, some time or other, cherish very nearly the same feelings toward the ocean with me. There now is your insular city of the Manhattoes, belted around by wharves as Indian isles by coral reefs. Commerce surrounds it with her surf. Right and left, the streets take you waterward. Its extreme downtown is the Battery, where that noble mole is washed by waves and cooled by breezes, which a few hours previous were out of sight of land. Look at the crowds of water gazers there. Circumambulate the city of a dreamy Sabbath afternoon. Go from Corlear's Hook to Coenties Slip, and from thence by Whitehall, northward. What do you see? Posted like silent sentinels all around the town, stand thousands upon thousands of mortal men fixed in their ocean reveries, some leaning against the spiles, some seated upon the pierheads, some looking over the bulwarks of ships from China, some high aloft in the rigging, and as if striving to get still a better seaward peep. But these are all landsmen of weeks, days, pent up in lath and plaster, tied to counters, nailed to benches, clinched to decks. How then is this? Are the green fields gone? What do they hear? But look, here come more crowds, pacing straight for the water, and seemingly bound for a dive. Strange, nothing will content them but the extremest limit of the land. Loitering under the shady lee of yonder warehouses will not suffice. No, they must get just as nigh the water as possibly they can without falling in. And there they stand, miles of them, leagues, inlanders all. They come from lanes and alleys and streets and avenues north, east, and south and west. Yet here they all unite. Tell me, does the magnetic virtue of the needles of compasses of all those ships attract them thither? Once more, say you are in the country, in some high land of the lakes. Take almost any path you please, and then 10 to 1 it carries you down in a dale and leaves you there by a pool in the stream. There is magic in it. Let the most absent-minded of men be plunged in his deepest reveries, stand that man on his legs, set his feet a-going, and he will infallibly leave you to water, if water there be in all that region. Should you ever be athirst in the great American desert, try this experiment. If your caravan happened to be supplied with a metaphysical professor, yes, as everyone knows, meditation and water are wedded forever. But here is an artist. He desires you to paint the dreamiest, shadiest, quietest, most enchanting bit of romantic landscape in all the valley of the Saco. What is the chief element he employs? There stand his trees, each with a hollow hunk, as if a hermit and a crucifix were within. And here sleeps his meadow, and there his cattle. And up from yonder cottage goes a sleepy smoke. Deep into the distant woodlands wind a mazy way. reaching to overlapping spurs of mountains bathed in their hillside blue. But though the picture lies thus entranced, and though this pine tree shakes down its sides like leaves upon the shepherd's head, yet all were vain unless the shepherd's eye were fixed upon the magic stream before him. Go visit the prairies in June when, for scores on scores of miles, you wade knee-deep among tiger lilies. What is the one charm wanting? Water. There is not a drop of water there. Were Niagara but its cataract of sand, would you travel your 1,000 miles to see it? Why did the poor poet of Tennessee, upon suddenly receiving 2 handfuls of silver, deliberate whether to buy him a coat which he sadly needed or invest his money in a pedestrian trip to Rockaway Beach? Why is almost every robust, healthy boy with a robust, healthy soul in him at some time or other crazy to go to sea? Why, upon your first voyage as a passenger, did you yourself feel such a mystical vibration when first told that you and your ship were now out of sight of land? Why did the old Persians hold the sea holy? Why did the Greeks give it a separate deity and own the brother of Jove? Surely all this is not without meaning, and still deeper the meaning of that story of Narcissus, who, because he could not grasp the tormenting mild image he saw in the fountain, plunged into it and was drowned. But that same image we ourselves see in all rivers and oceans. It is the image of the ungraspable phantom of life, and this is the key to all. Now, when I say I am in the habit of going to sea whenever I begin to grow hazy about the eyes, I begin to be overconscious of my lungs. I do not mean to have inferred that I'd ever go to sea as a passenger. Of course, to go as a passenger, you must needs have a purse, and a purse is but a rag unless you have something in it. Besides, passengers get seasick, grow quarrelsome, don't sleep of nights, do not enjoy themselves very much, as a general thing. No, I never go as a passenger, nor, though I am something of a salt, do I ever go to sea as a commodore, or a captain, or a cook. I abandon the glory and distinction of such offices to those who like them. For my part, I abominate all honorable, respectable toils, trials, and tribulations of every kind whatsoever. It is quite as much as I can do to take care of myself without taking care of ships, barks, brigs, schooners, and whatnot. And as for going as cook, though I confess there is considerable glory in that, a cook being a sort of officer on shipboard, yet somehow I never fancied broiling fowls, though once there is no one who will speak more respectably, not to say reverentially, of a broiled fowl than I will. It is out of idolatrous dotings of the old Egyptians upon broiled ibis and roasted river horse that you see the mummies of those creatures in their huge bakehouses, the pyramids. No. When I go to sea, I go as a simple sailor, right before the mast, plumb down into the forecastle, aloft there to the royal masthead. True, they order me about some, and make me jump from spar to spar like a grasshopper on a May meadow. And at first, this sort of thing is unpleasant enough. It touches one's sense of honor, particularly if you come from an old established family in this land. The Van Rensselaers or Randolphs or Hardicanutes. And more than all, if just previous to putting your hand in the tar pot, you have been lording it as a country schoolmaster, making the tallest boy stand in all of you. The transition is a keen one, I assure you, from schoolmaster to a sailor, and requires a strong decoction of Seneca and the Stoics to enable you to grin and bear it. But even this wears off in time. What of it if some old hunks of a sea captain orders me to get a broom and sweep her down the decks? What does that indignity amount to, in the scales of the New Testament? Do you think the Archangel Gabriel thinks any less than me because I promptly and respectfully obey that old hunk's in that particular instance? Who ain't a slave? Tell me that. Well, then, however, the old sea captains may order me about, however they may thump and punch me about, I have the satisfaction of knowing that it is all right. Everybody else is in one way or another served in much the same way. Either in a physical or metaphysical point of view, that is. And so the universal thump is passed around and all hands should rub each other's shoulder blades and be content. Again, I always go to sea as a sailor because they make a point of paying me for my trouble, whereas they never pay passengers a single penny that I ever heard of. On the contrary, passengers themselves must pay. And there's all the difference in the world between paying and being paid. The act of paying is perhaps the most uncomfortable infliction of those two orchard thieves entailed upon us. But being paid, what will compare with it? The urban activity with which a man receives money is really marvelous. Considering that we so earnestly believe money to be the root of all earthly evils, and that on no account can a moneyed man enter heaven, how cheerfully we consign ourselves to perdition. Finally, I always go to sea as a sailor because of the wholesome exercise and pure air of the forecastle deck. For as in this world winds are far more prevalent than winds from astern, that is if you never violate the Pythagorean maxim, so for the most part, the Commodore on the quarterdeck gets its atmosphere secondhand from the sailors in the forecastle. He thinks he breathes it first, but not so. Much the same way do the commonalty lead their leaders in many other things, at the same time that the leaders little suspect it. But wherefore it was that after having repeatedly smelt the seas of merchant sailor, I should now take it in my head to go on a whaling voyage. This, the invisible police officer of the fates, who has the constant surveillance of me and secretly dogs me and influences me in some unaccountable way, he can better answer than anyone else. And doubtless my going on this whaling voyage formed part of the grand program of Providence that was drawn up a long time ago. It came as a sort of brief interlude and solo between the more extensive performances. I take it that this part of the bill must have run something like this. Grand contested election for the presidency of the United States. Whaling voyage by one Ishmael. Bloody battle in Afghanistan. Though I cannot tell why it was exactly that those stage managers, the fates, put me down for this shabby part of a whaling voyage, when others were set down for more magnificent parts in high tragedies, and short and easy parts in genteel comedies, and jolly parts in farces, though I cannot tell why this was exactly, yet now that I recall all the circumstances, I think I can see a little into the springs and motives which, being cunningly presented to me under various disguises, induced me to set about performing the part I did, besides cajoling me into the delusion that it was a choice resulting from my own unbiased free will and discriminating judgment. Chief among those motives was the overwhelming idea of the great whale himself. Such a portentous and mysterious monster roused all my curiosity. Then the wild and distant seas where he rolled his island bulk, the undeliverable, nameless perils of the whale, these, with all the attending marvels of 1,000 Patagonian sights and sounds, helped to sway me to my wish. With other men, perhaps such things would not have been inducements. But as for me, I am tormented with an everlasting itch for things remote. I love to sail forbidden seas and land of barbarous coasts. Not ignoring what is good, I am quick to perceive a horror, but could still be social with it, would they let me, since it is but well to be on friendly terms with all the inmates of the place one lodges in. reason of these things, then, the whaling voyage was welcome. The great floodgates of the wonder world were swung open, and in the wild conceits that swayed me to my purpose, two and two there floated in my inmost soul endless processions of the whale, and midmost of them all, one great hooded phantom, like a snow hill in the air.